Part 1 of Purity Culture. I'm warning everyone right now that these Purity Culture episodes are going to have some colorful language. It's about sex, okay? There's stuff I'm going to have to say, and I don't choose to be flowery about it. I'm going to be blunt. So take that as your official warning. Purity culture is not unique to recons, but as you might guess, when a recon takes hold of something, it creates an entirely new animal. Purity culture began in the late 1980s, beginning of the 90s. It became this movement, not even just teaching kids about abstinence before marriage, which is what they posture it to be. It's simply, oh, we're teaching kids about how they need to wait before marriage because the Bible says so. And like, okay, yeah, no kidding, we need to do that. That is how, and this is the key here, that is how we can understand the perfect relationship between Christ and the church. The way he intends us to have a relationship with him, it helps us to become closer to his heart. That should be always the driving factor of anything we do. It shouldn't be, oh, and we need to do this because otherwise we'll go to hell. Which, frankly, they might not have said those words, but people in purity culture have said as much, because you will become your own living hell on earth. You will become less than human if you do not adhere to the purity culture rules. Purity culture is called a culture. It's a lifestyle. It's not just don't do this thing. It's everything you breathe and ingest is wrapped up in your genitalia. Purity culture touches on different things you're supposed to wear or not wear, how you do or do not date, and everything surrounding your interaction with the opposite sex. Like everything. I mean, I got chided for sitting too close to a guy in junior high in a group class doing scientific experiments. Okay, so it goes that far. And I had to make sure that I was constantly aware, because apparently this boy liked me, or I liked him, or a combination of the two. God forbid you are 15 with a crush. But I, in purity culture, was supposed to keep an eye on my situation, like where I was situated, in proximity to this child. So it's a culture. It's literally where do you exist in the room? How many times do you look at said person? In short, the entire point of purity culture centers around human sexuality and being able to control or contort it. Yeah, okay, fine. The intent is to keep kids safe. That's what they say. It doesn't amount to that. It amounts to heaps and heaps of guilt and shame and anxiety for being the way that God made us. Heterosexual, sexual beings. Which is always how it goes, because it's never about the relationship we have with God. It's always about how well we can check the boxes and works righteousness gospel again. And the manipulation, okay, because the guilt and shame, I tell you that. But how do we get there? So have you heard of the purity ring situation? Okay, so this is how it would go. Not particularly in my circles, but in the more mainstream purity culture adherents. They would have these almost like, now that I think of it, almost like your testimony, or you know how people have the altar calls and you go and you make a profession of faith. They'd have the same kind of thing where you would make a profession of your purity for future. Like, you promise that you will always remain pure until you get married. And you do this in front of friends and family and your church or whatever, and make this statement kind of as if it was on par with making a decision for Christ himself. Making a decision to not use your genitalia prematurely was literally on par with your salvation. Okay, so you make this profession and everyone's watching you and everyone's holding you accountable to this decision, and then you wear a ring to signify, just like freaking marriage and an oath before God, and you wear a ring to signify that you are not going to violate that oath. It's all about manipulation. It's heightened, conjured up pressure over messing up. There is no grace. There is a one strike and you're out. And what does your out look like? When you are out, when you strike out, if you strike out, and I hope you don't, for other reasons, but if you strike out, how does it look? You are less than human. You have stripped yourself of the ability to be loved and to love well. That is literally what they will tell you. And just like pause for a second. We don't do this for any other sin. Okay, this is the sin of impropriety, like infidelity, and fornication. We don't have purity rings where kids get up and make a profession of economic frugality. Let's be a good steward of our wealth. Kids, you get your first job. You're not going to spend it every weekend on candy and movies. You're going to save it. You're going to use it for wise decisions. We don't have those kinds of rings. Why not? Is that a worse or better sin or what? We don't have anger management rings. We don't have I will not lose my temper. We don't have that. We don't have envy rings. We don't have any other thing. We got the purity ring though. Why is that such an amazingly worse? Now, I know what you're going to say. It'd be like the consequences could be far greater. Fine. But you're talking about the economics of sin. There are consequences that are built in based on how much you've had to ignore your Savior in order to commit that sin. But it doesn't mean that it's more likely to send you to hell apart from grace. That's the difference. But they treat it as such because you are not able to love well and you are not able to be loved well if you have used up your first chance. You are less than human. Your identity is wrapped up in this genitalia. It always hits at the identity. Okay, let's pretend you've subscribed to all this and be like, okay, I'm going to save myself to marriage. Let me pursue a healthy relationship and get married. How do you go about doing that? Well, purity culture has something to say. You are not allowed to date. God forbid you date because the world does that. We got to do something different. We got to go against the grain. Always go against the grain, even if the grain happens to make sense and could even be based in scripture. No, it's because everybody else adhered to it. We have to be different. That's what cults do. You can't date. You cannot get to know the individual on an individual basis for who they are before deciding whether or not you want to pursue a more serious relationship. You're not allowed to do that. You have to already decide you want to marry this person before you can get to know them. I remember hearing in purity culture here, this couple who they're married now, but she was told when they were dating, they weren't engaged yet, but they were dating, and she was told that because the two of them had said the words "I love you" to each other while they were still boyfriend and girlfriend, according to the way the terminology works in the secular world, because they wouldn't say that if you were courting. You can't call it dating either. She was told she was committing emotional pornography. What the fuck is that? Like another one. He did not marry this chick, thank God. But he would say, while they date, "I love you." And she would like, "Please don't tell me that. Please don't tell me that." Like he was touching her tits. Like, it was weird. He's like, it's the truth. And when you are in a relationship that you're pursuing and you've gotten to know them to the point where this really could be the person that you spend the rest of your life with, as a sexual being, why are you not going to express that? Did Christ not more or less woo us to himself? That's the thought. So with that situation, like with the guy, what does purity culture do to men? Like, the detriments of purity culture are now coming to full fruition because we've had all these years since the early 90s and late 80s to study it, more or less. Kind of like a 30-year study from science, okay? They're all adults now. They're late-age millennials, early-age Gen X. What's going on with them? The men, they end up being ashamed of being attracted to women in a healthy fashion because they've equated attraction with lust. Literally, my husband had those remnants embedded in his mind. He struggled with being okay enjoying how I look on a just strictly attraction level because he got messed up. And attraction and lust being equivocated cheapens the sin of lust as well as cheapens the joy and glory of healthy attraction that God gave us because we are fearfully and wonderfully made. So what is the definition? Because they are very, very different. In the 1828 Webster's Dictionary, which I love, everything in my mind comes from that because he's the one that helped spearhead the English language. People can call me old-fashioned. I do not care. Attraction is the power or act of alluring, drawing to, inviting, or engaging as the attraction of beauty or eloquence. And then in like heavenly bodies and magnetic fields, he goes, the power, principle, or tendencies in bodies to unite. Come together is the implication. Then in Cambridge and Oxford dictionaries, which are more modern spin-offs, still the same thing. The act or power of evoking interest, pleasure, or liking for someone or something. Something that attracts or is intended to attract people by appealing to their desires and tastes. Personal charm. Like, you have to like someone, who they are. And how do you know who they are? You talk to them. You date them, maybe. Oh my goodness. What do you enjoy? What are your pastimes? What are your passions? Where have you been in life? What is your life story? What have you learned? Where are you planning to go? What are your future hopes? What's your relationship with God? And you see if you resonate with that, because you have to live with this guy for the rest of your life if you marry him or girl, you know? I am attracted when I see a dog. Not sexually, perverts. I want a pet dog. It's cute. I am attracted to Fluffy, okay? I am attracted to pretty music. When I hear some music I like on the radio, oh, look, I'm wearing a Matchbox 20 shirt. If I hear a Matchbox 20 shirt on the radio, if I hear Matchbox 20 on the radio, I am going to be attracted to the volume button and turn it up. Why? I like the song. I am drawn to it. There's nothing wrong with that. A guy seeing a hot girl walking down the street that wants to look twice because her figure is top-notch because God made her that way. She shows to herself to be fertile. Literally, at base level, that's what it is. God forbid he looks and thinks she's pretty. Now, when does it turn into lust? Let's talk about lust. Webster's 1828. To have carnal desire. To desire eagerly the gratification of carnal appetite, provoking to sensuality. Enticing to lust or exciting carnal desire, vigorous, robust, stout, very aggressive. Cambridge and Oxford and another Merriam-Webster dictionary like later editions. A very powerful feeling of wanting something, very strong sexual desire, especially when love is not involved. Intense or unbridled sexual desire, lasciviousness. If he sees the girl walking down the street and he thinks she's pretty, that's attraction. He's heterosexual, okay? God made him that way. Thank God he works and he's not a homosexual. He sees her walking down the street, however, and if he decides that he's going to fantasize about all the things he would do to that ass, that's another problem. He starts thinking about, and you know, I hear guys, oh, well, we have a Rolodex in our minds. I don't know, like nobody uses Rolodex anymore, but that's something that was coined by I Kissed Dating Goodbye. Rip Josh Harris in spirit. A Rolodex of images where they see a girl and now they can't get that image out of their mind because it is imprinted in their mind because they are visual creatures, yada, yada, yada. Okay, fine, you know what? That's how you're created. You can remember an image easier than a woman can remember an image because we are more driven by sound and touch than we are by sight in the sexual realm. But it is his problem if he starts to think about and desire strongly consuming her on his own selfish gratification. Thinking she's beautiful, including the tits and the ass, is not the problem. Okay? If he starts to pine over it and just drool over it because he can't think of anything else when he sees her other than sleeping with her, that's a problem. That is lust. That is a huge difference that purity culture does not separate. They demonize the man for thinking that a girl is pretty. And let me tell you something, and we're going to get into this from the recons, but you can absolutely lust after your spouse. It doesn't just go away because you married someone that you can sleep with, okay? And that's what people actually think happens. They think that you get the girl, like I'm talking in recon, purity culture, whatever, you get the girl so that you can lust legally. That is not it. So there's no attraction at all. There's lust and not lust, and there's good lust and bad lust. I'll tell you how you lust after your spouse. Okay? I'll do the girl, for example. If you are consuming on your own carnal, selfish gratification. You will demand or fantasize about how much your life is in order because your wife takes care of the kids and cleans them, teaches them, washes the dishes, does the laundry, cooks your meals, does your errands, balances the checkbook, wears pretty things that you feel like you've earned, commanding her around the house because you think that you're owed it, because your carnal desires want the ease and want to look good in front of your friends because you have a wife that you've kept in line. That is lust. I'll die on that hill. Like, I don't know if I've ever heard anyone say that, but that is lust because it is selfish, carnal consumption. People don't think about that. They think that, okay, well, the fact that you can legally have sex now takes away the ability for you to lust, unless, of course, like, you do it to somebody else. But, like, you can keep your lust at bay by just taking it out on her, the pent-up energy. That is so evil and not what God intends. And recons, let me tell you, because men were coming out being ashamed to be masculine. They're like, dang, I think this girl is pretty. I must be lusting, you know? And the recons are like, no. It's pent-up lust energy that you're okay with doing on your wife now. That was the direction they're going. You got Thug Dilson, who continuously calls women a lawful sexual outlet once you're married to them, which is already disgusting. But we'll talk about, because he wrote this book called, this article or whatever, the Economics of Sexual Purity. It's lust. He wrote in Get the Girl, you can get it off Canon Press or don't. He says, there should be no shame in getting the woman because you need a lawful sexual relationship. So don't get to know her. Just if you need someone to fuck up, go get a girl, and it's okay. Just use her. Now, he does say, well, the problem will come when you use someone while forgetting who and what they are. Why the what? It's just like, the problem comes when you use someone while forgetting who and what they are. But it's okay to use them. You just can't use them while forgetting who and what they are. Like, it's messed up. We're not a what. And then in the thing he wrote called How to Exasperate Your Wife, like, not even joking, he says, I am beset by sexual temptation. Does God have a solution for me? Yes. This is the solution, y'all. The love of a good woman who is willing to make love to you for the rest of your life. Because you're just going to reprogram or redirect your sin and pour it into your wife. You're going to pour that sin into your helpmeet instead of, this is what the solution. Does God have a solution? Yes. Turn to Christ and ask him to cleanse your heart, because the lust doesn't go away. It just takes on different forms, which I've talked about, the cleaning and whatever. And it honestly could just be in the sexual realm. If you think that she's owing you those relations, and P.S., that is what happens. The men have mortified their mere attraction to the point of extinction, that their lust takes over, and now they think that because they've waited, they are owed the woman's unarguing or uncontending sexual submission. And that's not how it works. And you got marriages that don't work now. But moving on for 1 second, before we get into the marriage dynamic, let's talk about the woman. What is she damaged like? The women are damaged because purity culture teaches them to be ashamed of their bodies, because their body is intrinsically evil because of how it looks. It is intrinsically predisposed to make men sin. And we're ashamed of it. They were created sinfully. They were not created fearfully and wonderfully. They were created like God created them sinfully. Not that they bear sin like we all do, but that their bodies, their shape, everything they enjoy too, in the body, how they feel, is sin. Because we are not programmed the same way in our sexuality. The same things that turn a guy on do not turn a girl on. Somehow that means that the women do not have anything that can really turn them on. And we're perverted if we are actually sexual beings. So we are doomed. We are doomed before the game begins. So because we are intrinsically created evil, we must cover up said evil to the point of oblivion of our femininity in many cases. There's different lines that people draw, but you've got, the knee-length skirts and the, boxy blouses, and you can't show your neck, and that's pretty extreme. And then you've got, people that said, well, we got the jeans test where you gotta, if you can pull off your jeans away from your leg and it's like an inch or an inch and a half, then it's okay, kind of stuff, like the more subtle kind of things. Or just arbitrary, like, oh, well, that material and that. I wasn't allowed to have my bridesmaids in my wedding wear spaghetti straps. They perfectly covered up the cleavage. The bridesmaids they covered the knee. But that wasn't good enough. Like, well, we need to have a bolero. We need to have them wearing, like, the little jacket with the short sleeves that women wear. And I was like, we need to? Like, I wear spaghetti straps. And that was the thing. This was the way that it didn't make sense to me. I was like, we do wear spaghetti straps. Like, I've worn them. Like tank tops. And I was told that, well, because we're in a church, our shoulders shouldn't be shown. And I was like, well, so-and-so in church does that, though. But this is a wedding. Like, it was just an arbitrary line because they wanted to do what they wanted to do. So they made their little boleros. I didn't care. I mean, heck, I wore sneakers to my wedding. So I really didn't care too much. I was just like, why here, why now? Why this arbitrary line drawn here and now without any prior theological precedent? It was because purity culture is whack. And that's what they decided to hone in on. So there was that, the artificial lines. But then we've got the fact that any of our beauty that we have is not given to us to enjoy and to be with our Father and thank Him for how we feel. Men can do that. I mean, you literally, like, it's great to be a man blogs kind of stuff. Yes, it is. God made men. It's also great to be a woman. Women like being women, men like being men. Like, barring any weird circumstances. I'm talking about the Christian community here. We're not going into the trans situation. But it's not okay to be a woman for the sake of being a woman. Because it's only we exist because we have a job to do for men. Now, let me back up before I even go further. Like, it is true that Eve was created as a helpmeet for Adam. And therefore, women help men. Women help men see their blind spots. Men don't get it all the time. Men are tunnel visioned. Women see the big picture kind of thing. That doesn't mean that we serve them to the point where we just answer every beck and call from their selfishness. There's a difference. And I wasn't planning to get into all that, but what I'm trying to say is, here's an example. My mom and I, in the house, I was prepubescent, and I'm folding the laundry. And I remember coming across one of my mom's bras, which wasn't new. Like, I've seen underwear before. I've folded clothes since I was 5. And I knew that I didn't have these parts yet. But for whatever reason, maybe because I was 11 and getting to the point where I knew things would start happening, I don't know. I was like, Mom, just weird question, but why is your bra all like lacy and pretty and like colorful? No one's gonna see it. You wear clothes over it. I mean, like, who cares? Like, I know I can wear lacy dresses and show off that and be pretty, but like, nobody sees the underwear. What's the point? It's less expensive to get something plain. And I was, and still am, really into frugality. My mom could have used that as a great opportunity to celebrate the human female body and say something like, perhaps, well, I like to feel pretty, and all of my clothes are according to the tastes I like. I'm attracted to that look. I like how it feels. It's comfortable on my chest. Whatever that is. And, God made me this way and I want to decorate it, even if, I don't, even if people don't get to see it, my body's not for them. It is used to glorify God, and I want to decorate it, even if nobody sees it on the outside. Something like that. I don't know. Instead, she says, well, your dad sees it, which I was far too young to understand, and I was disgusted and told her so, and I said, that's the dumbest reason I've ever heard. And I was kind of just prepubescent moody. But I don't think I was far off with being moody, because I was just like, why would you get anything just so a man appreciates it? Now, there is something to be said about you're married or you're dating and you're like, oh, my guy likes this outfit, I'll wear it. Fine. But that was not the essence of the point of this. And you want to say that I'm pulling, if you want to tell me that I'm splitting hairs or latching onto something that doesn't have any teeth, well, the proof is in the pudding, because that was not it. That was just the beginning, as I was approaching certain ages, where my body was told, or I was told that my body was pretty or looked a certain way for a guy's gratification only. There was no other reason. And it translated into other things. And as the purity culture situation developed in my brain and I understood the ramifications of it, I did not want to be saddled with the responsibility of causing my brothers to stumble. So I took it upon myself for a good 4 years to not look like a woman. I would not shop in the girls' department. I would shop in the boys' department. And I told myself I was a tomboy. For a time, I thought I might have been a lesbian, because I did not want to have anything to do with the guilt and shame and anxiety and responsibility of having a guy look at how I was made that I couldn't help and fall into sin. I thought it was, everything in my brain at that point was disgusting this, disgusting that. It was disgusting. And I remember I would tell, especially my mom, who tried to help me find the clothes that would flatten me out and make me look as square as possible. She didn't talk to me about feeling good about my body, never about that, but she was just happy that I wasn't going for the midriff shirts. So the fact that I was looking like a boy and had an orientation crisis, that was okay. Because as long as I wasn't showing my midriff, that was okay. You know what I'm saying? Now, granted, I never told her about, and I never felt like I was a lesbian. I was just thinking to myself, well, is this what lesbians feel like? Because I was so disgusted by the idea that a boy would look at me and find it attractive. That concept disgusted me, because it was considered sin in the circles that I grew up in. So I'm like, the fact that happens, I don't want to be responsible for that. So I was like, well, maybe this is what it means to be a lesbian. Maybe I don't know what I'm doing. That's as far as it went. But that's a conversation you should have with your parents, and I could not have that, because purity culture wins, So we have these true love waits rallies that purity culture would put on, where all these speakers would go around talking to the youth about how true love will wait until marriage for sex. Yes and no. Because while, yes, if you truly have the most perfect semblance of charity and love and patience and everything in your heart and soul, it'll be easier to wait and you might be able to do it. However, that's not what it was. As I've mentioned earlier, it was more like, you cannot love and do not love if you do not wait. Now, newsflash, maybe that's even true. But we are humans who are flawed. Even our best versions of loving someone or receiving love from someone are as filthy rags without grace. Paul says it. Our best attempts at loving are still crap. So, what's this whole thing about, oh, well, you have the perfect love if you don't have sex before? You know what? That's not true, though. Because, we do not have perfect love without Christ. It's not about whether or not we slept with somebody beforehand. That is a different component. Do not sleep with someone before marriage, because that is not what God has for you to understand his relationship with you. And there's a host of embedded consequences for not being able to exercise that portion of being made in God's image. That's what it is. Don't give me the true love, not true love, and you can't love, and you're less than human. You are less than human because you are damaged goods. You will never, ever, ever, ever be able to be forgiven. And that's actually, forgiven. Yeah, maybe you'll be forgiven, but you're still going to have this mark of Cain upon you. And that's kind of where the whole thing came, kind of a subcategory of purity culture. When this whole idea started to get out of whack, a new phenomenon came out about something like a rebirth virgin or something stupid ass like that, where it was oh, well, if you pray enough after you've committed fornication, you will physically become a virgin again. Physically have a hymen intact again. It was almost like a name it, claim it kind of spin-off, because they couldn't fathom a God who couldn't forgive. And I get it. It's terrible. They're coming up with these really cockamamie ways to get around the guilt and shame that these groups would put upon them artificially. No grace at all.